When I bought that land, no one understood my decision very well. It was on the outskirts of a small growing town in the interior of the United States, an area that still seemed forgotten among secondary highways, empty fields, and old crooked wooden fences. For many, it was just a large piece of land with no immediate use. For me, it was a reserve for the future. I had no grandiose plans at the time. I didn't dream of high-rise buildings or luxury condos. My goal was simple: invest calmly, wait for the natural growth of the region, and one day decide what to do. The land was legally registered in my name, with taxes paid on time, clear documentation, and without any pending. It was a silent heritage, one of those that we almost forget we have. For the first few years, nothing happened. I would stop by from time to time, just to make sure everything was as before. Bush growing, old private property, signs half-worn by the sun. No movement other than occasional or curious hikers looking for shortcuts. Everything went smoothly. Until one day, when driving along the road that bordered the terrain, I noticed something different. There were machines. Trucks, tractors, men in helmets, stakes being driven into the ground. At first I thought I was confusing the place. I slowed down, looked closely, and felt a strange tightness in my chest. It was over there, on my turf. In the following days, the movement only increased. The land began to be leveled, internal streets were opened, poles appeared as if they had always been part of the landscape. Before long, signs were advertising a new community project, affordable housing for families in the area. The initial shock gave way to confusion. How was that possible? No one had come looking for me. No proposal, no notification, no official warning. Still, the works proceeded with impressive speed. I talked to some residents of the city, trying to understand what was happening. I found out that a community association had secured funding to build affordable housing. The idea was to help families who had been living on rent for years. The project was welcomed by almost everyone. There was enthusiasm, hope, people betting they're the dream of their own home. And that's exactly what made me stop. I could have stopped everything immediately. He could have called lawyers, authorities, embargoed the work in the early days. Legally, I had that right. But when I looked closely, I saw something that made me hesitate. People working hard, families visiting the site with their eyes shining, children running between foundations that were still fresh, imagining rooms that did not even exist. Houses began to appear one after another. Simple but well-made structures. Organized streets, sidewalks, common areas. Within months, it wasn't just buildings anymore. It was a community in the making. Meanwhile, I watched in silence. I kept all the records organized. I saved photos, documents, dates. I discreetly consulted a real estate lawyer, just to understand my options. He confirmed what I already knew. The land was mine. The construction was done without permission. The law was on my side. Still, I made a decision that surprised even myself. I let it continue. Weeks turned into months. In total, 89 houses were built. Some families began to move. Gardens appeared, toys in the yards, bicycles leaned on the balconies. That empty space had turned into a living neighborhood. And I kept quiet, waiting for the right moment. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't blind greed. It was a silent conviction that everything needed to be solved in the right way and at the right time. When the last house was finished, when the community finally celebrated the completion of the project, I knew the real conflict was just beginning. And for the first time since it all began, I took a deep breath and took the next step. When I decided to act, it wasn't with fanfare or public confrontations. I started returning to the city more often, walking the newly paved streets as if I were just another curious visitor. Nobody there knew who I was. To them, I was just a woman looking at houses, gardens, and signs with little-known family names. The community had created an identity of its own in a short time. The houses were similar, but each family found a way to differentiate themselves. A fence painted blue, makeshift flower pots, American flags attached to the balconies. There was a genuine sense of belonging, something rare to see born so quickly. I started talking to some people. First casually, asking if they liked living there, how long they had been in the city. I heard simple stories, but full of meaning. Couples who saved for years, single mothers who finally had a yard for their children, seniors who moved out of cramped apartments for something quieter. Each report reinforced the weight of the situation. That's how I met Linda, one of the informal leaders of the community. She did not have an official position, but it was evident that everyone trusted her. Organized, practical, always involved in solving small neighborhood problems, she spoke of the project with pride. He explained how the association had managed to get state funds, how everything seemed to be finally working out after so many obstacles. As she spoke, I listened carefully, keeping my expression neutral. I didn't interrupt. I didn't ask sensitive questions. I just watched. It was important to understand not only the legal, but also the human part. On the other side of this story was the community association, made up of well-meaning people, but clearly disorganized when it came to documentation. I discovered, little by little, that they had acquired erroneous information about the possession of the land. An old error of records, an outdated map. No one checked the data to the end. When they realized the area was available, they went ahead with the project without checking properly. In the United States, mistakes like this may seem small at first, but they grow fast when no one takes responsibility. My lawyer confirmed that, legally, the situation was clear. I had never sold, rented, or leased that space. There was no contract, verbal agreement, or formal authorization. The entire construction had been done on private property, albeit without direct bad faith. Even so, I hesitated once more. Not out of any doubt about my rights, but because I understood that this was not just a land dispute. It was a clash between signed papers and lives in progress. Any sudden move could cause panic, revolt, and irreversible consequences for families who were not directly to blame for the mistake. So I decided to follow a careful strategy. We filed the lawsuit discreetly, without public disclosure. The lawsuit did not call for immediate eviction or demolition. The request was the official recognition of the property and the opening of negotiations for regularization. I didn't want to destroy anything. I wanted the law to be respected and a fair solution to be built. When the association received the notification, the impact was immediate. Meetings were hastily convened, lawyers hired, rumors began to circulate. The quiet of the neighborhood gave way to a quiet tension. Conversations subsided, people gathered in small groups, whispering on the sidewalks. It was then that my presence began to be noticed. Linda recognized me on one of these visits and, with firm politeness, asked me if I was part of the process. I didn't deny it. It said only that it was the owner of the land and that it was seeking a legal solution for everyone. The silence that followed was heavy. She didn't scream. She didn't accuse me. He just took a deep breath and said something that stuck with me. "We built a home here. I hope justice sees that." That sentence summed it all up. In the following months, the case progressed. Hearings, technical analysis, survey of old documents. The truth began to assert itself. The mistake had been of the association, not of the families, and the ground was, without any doubt, mine. But the judge made it clear from the start that he would not allow an inhumane solution. Any decision would need to balance legality and social impact. It was at this point that I realized that this story was far from just about a plot. It had become a test of character not just for me, but for everyone involved. And as the process progressed, a question echoed in my mind. How would we get out of this without destroying everything that had been built? The legal process has moved faster than anyone expected. The documentation was clear, and the association's mistakes were evident. Still, the court made something very clear from the start. No decision would be made without considering the human impact of that situation. During the hearings, I was present at all. Not as someone distant or cold, but as an active part of the solution. I heard reports from families, saw photos of houses being built, followed emotional testimonies of people who never imagined living something like this. They were neither invaders nor opportunists. They were victims of a serious administrative error. When the time came for the decision, The judge officially recognized that the land was mine, without any legal doubt. The property was re-registered in my name, and the construction was found to be irregular. The silence in the room was heavy. Some people cried, others just lowered their heads. But then came the second part of the decision. The court determined that, since it was an error of the association, and considering that the houses were already completed and inhabited, the solution should be negociata. I had the right to claim everything, including immediate possession, but I also had the option to propose a settlement. And that's exactly what I did. I put forward a clear proposal. The houses would not be demolished, no one would be evicted. The community could remain there legally. In return, the association, with support from the state and a housing fund, would officially buy the land from me, paying a fair value, in installments, that respected the public budget without harming the residents. The agreement included something even more important. The family's contracts would be regularized, guaranteeing legal certainty for all. No family would lose their home. The reaction was immediate. Fear gave way to relief. People who barely spoke to me started thanking me. Linda, who has always been steadfast, came to me with teary eyes and said that she would never forget that decision. For the first time since it all started, I felt that the weight in my chest had decreased. Months later, the agreement was approved. Payment began to be made as arranged, and the land officially passed to the community association. I received what was rightfully mine, without destroying lives along the way. I returned to that community some time later, no longer burdened by the conflict. The streets were more alive. Trees had been planted. A small square was under construction. Children played where before there was only empty land. The houses remained simple, but now they had something that was previously lacking: tranquility. I walked around unrecognized by everyone, and that felt right. That story needed no applause. I just needed a fair outcome. Today, when I think about that land I bought years ago, I realize that it gave me much more than financial return. He put me in front of a difficult choice, one of those that reveal who we are when no one is looking. I could have stopped everything at the beginning. It could have destroyed 89 homes with one signature. But I chose to wait, to watch, to act at the right time, and to trust that justice can be steadfast while remaining humane. In the end, everyone gained something. They have gained a safe home. I gained respect, peace, and the certainty that I did the right thing. And that community, built on a mistake, eventually became an example of how conflicts can be resolved without hatred, only with responsibility and empathy. Sometimes justice is not about beating someone. It's about making sure no one has to lose everything for the truth to prevail. If this story made you think, share your opinion. Would you have done the same in my place? Everyday stories remind us that simple choices can change dozens of lives.